Hi, so I whiled away a few moments today having a look at some of the comments on the past few videos, obviously related to Brexit. Everything seems to be Brexit at the moment, of course. Very interesting, very enjoyable. But there were a few issues that are easily resolvable, really. There's a lot of people have it in their heads that the Brexit day, which is supposed to be the 29th of March 2019, is somehow enshrined in law. For some people, it's enshrined in European law. In some people's minds, it's enshrined in UK law. It isn't at all. It is not at all a legal requirement to leave on the 29th of March. That's simply the default date. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through the relevant bits of legislation. I've done this with the European Withdrawal Act before, but just, for the purposes of this one, because it's cropped up again. But I'm also going to go through Article 50. Article 50 doesn't take that much reading. And I'll put links to them in the description below, of course. You can always check those out. These are also from source. These are not third-party websites that are just paraphrasing. These are the actual documents themselves online. So let's just get that up. So here we have the European Withdrawal Act. So what this was for, it was basically Parliament saying, look, we're super serious about this, but we need to copy all our laws across as well. We can't just, because otherwise severing all ties with the EU without doing anything else basically resets our country to almost like the Stone Age. So we need to copy all the laws across with the intention of then amending or repealing whichever ones as our Parliament sees fit later on. But when it comes, and this surprised me actually when I read through it, I had to read through it several times, and it is a weighty document. I imagine there's much larger documents. But when I had a look through it, I was amazed to see that there wasn't the date enshrined in there. Now, you can have a look through all of this if you wish yourself, but there is, when it comes to exit day, there is this part here, the parliamentary approval of the outcome of negotiations with the EU is one of the key parts of it. And if I just do a quick thing here for March, there's no mention at all. If I just put 29, there's no mention there at all either. That date is simply not mentioned. Now, if I put in 2019 on the other hand, there are mentions of this because there are some dates, or specifically there is one date that is mentioned in here, the 21st of January 2019. Apparently this is a super important date for stunningly boring reasons, but it is actually the only date, and you could look through the entire document yourself. As I say, there's a link below. This is the only date that's mentioned in there. This is purely about compelling the Prime Minister to give statements to Parliament in the event that Parliament do not vote for the deal, which, the vote is now going to take place next week, much later than originally planned. And that's really it. There's an awful lot of provisions in here. You could say to yourself, oh, he's only looked at that one provision. It's probably mentioned somewhere else. Feel free to go and have a look for it. It's not there. It is not there. So if it's not enshrined in UK law, well, of course, it's related to Article 50. Everyone knows that Article 50 says that when you trigger it, you're basically announcing your intention to leave the European Union. You have got 2 years to settle your affairs, after which you are leaving. No. It's simply the default position. So let's move across to Article 50. This really small, because this is part of the much larger Lisbon Treaty, of course. This is just a tiny little bit. And it is really small because no one thought that anyone would be daft enough to want to leave. It just had to be in there because if you're going to make a society, of course, you've got to have some provision for people who may leave their senses and want to leave. So I can actually read the whole thing here, even the bits that aren't relevant. So it says, 1, any member state may decide to withdraw from the Union in accordance with its own constitutional requirements. 2, a member state which decides to withdraw shall notify the European Council of its intention. In the light of the guidelines provided by the European Council, the Union shall negotiate and conclude an agreement with that state, setting out the arrangements for its withdrawal, taking account of the framework for its future relationship with the Union. That agreement shall be negotiated in accordance with Article 218(3) of the Treaty on the Function of the European Union. It shall be concluded on behalf of the Union by the Council, acting by a qualified majority after obtaining the consent of the European Parliament. Now, here is where the timing comes into it. So it says the treaties shall cease to apply to the state in question from the date of entry into force of the withdrawal agreement. So what that means is actually we could have left before if we already had an agreement sorted out. So let's say the government had gone, okay, people said they want to leave the EU. Okay, right. But actually it would be mad to leave the single market and the customs union. Tell you what, let's go to the European Union and say, look, okay, we need to leave the EU, but we want to stay in the single market, we want to stay in the customs union. Let's talk prices. How much is that going to cost us to get access to the market? They come up with a price, it's agreed, agreement done, goes to Parliament, let's say Parliament vote it through, done and dusted. We could have already left, so we didn't have to wait 2 years. The reason why the 2 years thing is because we haven't come to an agreement. So this is the next bit, of course. It says, or failing that, 2 years after the notification referred to in paragraph 2, so that indeed would be the 29th of March 2019, unless the European Council, in agreement with the member state concerned, unanimously decides to extend this period. So, of course, it does need agreement on all sides, but there is nothing to stop us going to the European Union and say, look, we've completely arsed it up. We need an extension. Do you agree? And if they agree, and of course the European Council, remember, is made up of each individual member state, and it does say that it has to be unanimous, so any single member state could say no, then the transition period is extended. And it's as simple as that. So the date isn't enshrined in law. So what is it that might cause either side to want to extend it? Well, if Parliament sinks the deal, and even if Theresa May brings it back and it sinks it again, or makes it clear from the first time that it's properly sunk, what some MPs have said, obviously this, who knows what's in the mind of Theresa May. What some MPs have said is if the deal is defeated by, say, 100 votes, that there will, she will recognise there's no point in bringing it back, because even if she wins a few more people over, it's not going to happen. She may, of course, be attempting to sweat it and say, well, look, we're going to crash out here with no deal. But MPs know, of course, that doesn't have to happen. So she may be forced in that scenario to have to ask for an extension, because nothing else can be done in the time, really, is how it seems to be. I'm not an expert on these things, but I can't see how anything else could be done on time. People have talked about the fact that Jeremy Corbyn will ask for a vote of no confidence. I'm just going to get rid of this because this is probably quite painful for you, just a pure white, even though there's a lot of white on that. Jeremy Corbyn says in the event that that the deal is defeated, he will call for a vote of no confidence. I still don't see that succeeding, but if it does, of course, then there'll be a general election. People have asked me about the timing of that. I don't know. All I do know is that it wouldn't immediately trigger a general election. This is the process. So he calls a vote of no confidence. As the leader of the opposition, he can do, any MP in theory can do that, but it wouldn't be tabled. But for the leader of the opposition, it would be. And so he will call for that. That would be arranged very quickly, I imagine. It could even be arranged for as soon as the following day. Parliament will vote on that. If it wins, and they'd need 320 votes for it to win. Now, in order for that to happen, oh God, let me get this right. I think that would require, assuming all opposition MPs vote in favour of it, which is by no means a given. You've got to bear in mind, although you would think all Labour MPs would vote for it, and you would think possibly Liberal Democrats would as well, I'm not sure about the SNP. Maybe, maybe not. You've got to remember at the last general election, they lost MPs. Maybe they'd worry that they'd stand to lose more. Maybe they think they would gain more. Who knows? It is possible. But that's an unknown for me. And the other thing is there are several independent MPs who don't belong to a party. All they're doing by voting for this is risking their own seats that they only just won a year ago. So I'm not entirely convinced. But let's say every opposition MP did. The DUP definitely won't. They have already said, they're in a deal. They've been bribed to support the government. And even though they won't vote for the Brexit deal, they will absolutely support Theresa May in a vote of no confidence. They've said that. They've made it clear recently as well. So she can count. They're the only votes she can count on, actually, apart from her own. But there would need to be, I think, 8 or 9 Tory MPs. I've forgotten now. But it's close to double figures that would have to rebel. That would be remarkable. Although there's any number of Tory MPs that are rebelling against her personally and against her deal, Against her government is a different matter because it's their government too. It's their party. And they'd be risking their own seat as well as risking expulsion from the party. I really don't think so at all. But let's say it did. The government then has 14 days to regain the confidence of the House. So to form a government, what has to happen is a member of Parliament has to have what's called the confidence of the House. That means one MP has to get a majority of the House to say that they should be Prime Minister. In normal circumstances, this is straightforward because usually in UK politics, one party has more than half the MPs and they just say, well, our leader's the Prime Minister, and it's all as simple as that. But in this particular case, Theresa May would have lost the confidence of the House, so she cannot continue as Prime Minister unless she can unless she can regain the confidence of the House. But much more likely, she'd have to resign, I suppose, and someone else would have to try and gain the confidence of the House. Now, realistically, that would have to be a Conservative because they've got the most MPs. Labour can't form a coalition to form a government at the moment. So it would have to be another Conservative MP, but, you know, they're not going to get... That's unlikely to do it as well, unless it's a single MP that can unite the entire Conservative Party, which is very unlikely. It's so polarised. So if in 14 days the government can't get... In other words, no government can form. There's basically now no government for the United Kingdom. That would trigger a general election. General elections usually last a while, or the campaigning usually lasts a while. They're usually triggered. It takes a while. That can't happen in this case because there's no government. There's no legitimate government. So it has to be done fairly quickly. I don't know how quickly, though. But either way, even Jeremy Corbyn is talking about needing an extension. So then we come to, will the European grant an extension? For me, it would depend on the reasons. Jeremy Corbyn's intention is to trigger a general election, win the general election, which is also not a given. And I'm not even sure whether it's likely or not. Who knows? I'd like to think so, but I don't know. And then go to the European Union to renegotiate a better deal. They've already said they're not going to do that. You know, they've said that the deal that's on offer, which remember isn't a final deal anyway, it's supposed to be a transitionary deal. Their attitude is very much and will remain very much, no matter who is in charge. This deal is a transition deal anyway. It allows us to function. This is what you're getting. Do you want it or not? So they wouldn't allow an extension for that. They've already said that. If, however, we were to come up with something like super quick, like I've already said, remaining within the customs union single market and just had to agree the fee. But even then, agreeing the fee, you've got to think is going to take longer than we've got left. So probably not, but in theory, because that doesn't require any complicated legal stuff. It just means, well, we're already in the single market. We're already in the customs union. We just leave everything else. But effectively what that means is we still have to follow all the rules. We just don't get a say in them. And we have to pay more for it. So realistically, what would probably have to happen is another referendum. If Parliament remains deadlocked, that is. I think they'd give time for that. Because that's in the European Union's interests. Now, I understand, and I know some EU members have been... Well, I say EU members. We're all EU members at the moment, if you're in Europe, even if you're in the UK. But ones who are going to remain EU members in April are already saying that everyone's a bit pissed off with us. And quite frankly, good riddance. I can totally understand that. I've said as much myself. I can totally understand it. We are pains in the arse. And I've said so for quite a long time. Before we even trigger this referendum. You know, the problem is we don't take Europe seriously, which means we don't always vote our MEPs based on who's going to do the best for us. We've sent a load of clowns off there who just want to cause trouble. So I completely understand that they're pissed off with us. That being said, just as it's mad for us to leave the EU, if the EU had any way of retaining us, you would think, I mean, we've got the second largest economy in Europe and the second largest military in Europe. I don't think we're easily tossed aside. Now, that's not to say I'm of the David Davis opinion if we just sit here, sitting on our hands, that the European Union will come begging us for a decent deal. Of course they won't. They'd rather lose us than their own principles. And, of course, they're a much larger market within themselves. But I don't think they want to lose us. They want to lose us being a pain in the arse. But I don't think they want to lose our trade or our military. So I think they would. I think they would agree to that if it were for the purposes of a referendum. I don't see them agreeing to it for any other reason. But again, it still comes down to the fact we are not legally locked into leaving on the 29th of March. Parliament doesn't have to change anything. It doesn't have to. I mean, if it had to, it would. You've got to remember this week, just this week, Parliament did amend the European Union Withdrawal Act. It could easily do so again. If the date was the sticking point, it could amend that. And we've already seen quite quickly. That being said, it doesn't need to. It's not in there. And of course, we have no right or power to amend the Lisbon Treaty, but we don't need to there either. Or we can't unilaterally ask, demand an extension. We can unilaterally, rescind Article 50, but again, that would require a referendum as well, for which we'd need more time. But if the European Union thought it was in their interest to give us more time because they knew what we were using it for and it was in their interest, then surely they would, surely. So there we go. There's the legal position. As I say, links in the description below if you can read those yourself. This one, I'm saying this one because you're not seeing it at the moment, but the Article 51 is super quick to read. The European Withdrawal Act is not, but if you believe it's in there, then all I can suggest is click on each provision in turn and do your search for March or 2019 or whatever part of the date you think will come up, and you will see it ain't there, because I have done it several times because I was amazed as well. All it does is refer to exit day without saying what that is. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, click the bell notification, share with other people who might be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.